Hello and welcome to this week's edition of the Comics Pals Image Reviews. Every single week, Image sends their books to us early so that we can review them for you guys day and date. This week, we have a full cast. We've got Marco.
Hello.
Pete.
Hello.
Bill.
Hello.
Kale.
Hello.
And me, I'm Sean.
Hello.
We're going to talk about four of Image's biggest releases this week. We've got Newburn. This is the new Chip Zdarsky book. We've got Radiant Black #9, Spawn, everybody's favorite, Spawn 323, and Primordial #2. So pretty hefty group of books. Before we get into the review, I do want to let you guys know how you can support the show and where you can find us. Wherever it is that you're listening to us right this second, hit the follow button, leave us a rating and a review, whatever you think we deserve. YouTube.com/thecomics pals is where we reside over there. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't for more content just like this. We've actually got an interview up with Chip Zdarsky from Comic-Con a couple of years ago. And this week, you'll be able to see our interview with Kyle Higgins. Pete did a great interview with Kyle Higgins that we actually talk about Radiant Black and things like that. So check all that good stuff out. If you leave comments, you can hear us respond to them on the main show, The Comics Pals, which drops every single Monday. We're talking about the characters you love and all the places you can find them and all the news that surrounds the comic book industry. This week, we talked about Eternals and its poor reviews so far. And we talked about the state of diversity in comics. We revisited that hot button issue. Without further ado, let's talk about Newburn. This is Chip Zdarsky. Of course, the writer, Chip Zdarsky, joined by Jacob Phillips on art. We also have a backup story called Brooklyn Zirconia by Nadia Shamas with Zayed Yusuf Ayub on art and Frank Kvetkovic on letters.
Nailed it.
Thanks. So, Chip obviously loves him some crime.
Great sentence.
He does love crime. You're right.
He thinks it's funny.
He probably does. Yeah, absolutely.
What a feeling.
And so it's no surprise that he feels like he is right at home with this first issue of Newburn. I really enjoyed it. I love stories that are, based in crime. This felt like something that could have been a part of the Criminal series by Ed Brubaker and Sean Phillips.
Yep.
In the best way. And it's got a unique hook or premise. This Newburn guy, Eaton Newburn, he is basically the liaison, the middleman between all the crime families who have decided to work together because it's gotten too hard to do this thing that they do and fight each other and fight the cops. So he kind of keeps things together. And I thought that was a brilliant concept. I could see that being a television show very easily.
Oh, yeah.
It's a very sort of marketable concept. And I wouldn't be surprised if it gets optioned for something down the road, but it also happens to be very good, in my opinion. Anybody want to jump in?
First thing, the character's name is Easton Newburn.
Sorry.
Not Eaton. But man, this hit me right where I live. Just like the rest of the internet, somehow I've been obsessed with Columbo. And this episodic issue, just, man, it hit me just it's a whole story. He gets the bad guy, and there's something else that will keep us going to the next issue. But it's not the mystery. We're there, we're done.
Right.
And he is more interesting than the mystery at hand. And I think that is what lacks in a lot of crime, is a true interesting protagonist that isn't just like a cardboard Mark Harmon figure.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of stories about like detectives, they feel really formulaic, because it's like a very like, there are ways that at least in Hollywood and books and things, that we like think of how a case progresses, right? So like there's a lot of tropes that I feel like the genre leans on, and that's fine. Every genre has its tropes. But to Sean's point earlier, like this being a character who has kind of a unique entry point into what is an otherwise very like kind of formulaic story, but like it has that classic feeling, but it's also set in the modern day, and it's dealing with like a very modern perspective on crime and like how technology has made it more difficult to get away with things, and like legislation has made it more difficult to just, get away with organized crime in the way that it used to be. But that doesn't mean it doesn't exist, right? I think all of those things are novel, right? And like the liaison thing is probably the only thing that's actually novel. Like all those other elements that I just described feel fresh because they're not overdone yet, right? Whereas like, maybe a story set in a more familiar time period, right, would possibly already feel stale. So I think it has all of those things going for it, on top of the fact that, as we've said a lot in the past, like Chip's a really good writer. He's good at writing dialogue, which I think is sometimes a thing that like comics writers don't always nail. Like I think there are definitely writers who are great at ideas and concepts and like setting an interesting stage while not necessarily writing dialogue that feels supernatural. Sorry, very natural. But I think Chip really excels at both of those things. Like this is a satisfying, complete narrative, but it's also just fun to sit in. Like Newburn is a cool, interesting character, right? Like you want to know what he's about. You want to know, what his history is, and what was it like when he was a cop, and all those things. Like to your, earlier point, Kel, the real mystery is just him. He's cool, and I want to know more about him. I would love to see him go on more adventures, and I think that's what you need for a good serial. All the set dressings are here.
The most direct comparison that I was thinking of, another Image book that I think we reviewed, we did review, Second Chances. That was that black and white book where like there was this noir and then Japanese influence aesthetic, and I think I feel like I remember us coming out of it and like saying it was pretty good, it was tight, but I think that's a good comparison point where the main character isn't necessarily fleshed out. He's just kind of like on the job. It's a more typical crime noir story
until the robots show up.
Until the robots show up, but like that's its differentiator, right? Is that it needs this like extra package to sort of sell you in on the story, where this is a singular focused concept, and you get pulled into it, and then it continues without it being like, oh, who is the next bad guy, the next case. It is, how does the story progress forward with these characters? And I think that was super, super tight. On the art, so Jacob Phillips, Sean Phillips' son, so frequent Ed Brubaker collaborator.
Oh, word.
Yeah.
Oh.
So like the art, the style, like it's all there just because they've been working together for the past few years. I think it wasn't All My Heroes Are, what is it called? I don't know if it was that one or if it was one of the other more recent books, but they've been working together a bit more, like colorist and art dynamic. But this, along with that Texas Blood, some of his like first Image stuff solo. So the influence is there. And obviously, Sean Phillips is an incredible artist, and I think Jacob's doing a really good job.
This kind of made me think of a character in the movie Pulp Fiction, Mr. Wolf, whose entire job was to like clean up crime scene. Basically, he brings in his guys, and that's his entire job. And there's an element of that here where Newman is his whole job is to Newburn. Can you
imagine if this is the exact same book but it was Newman?
that would make this book 100% better.
Chip Zdarsky could absolutely write that book, just for the record.
but Newburn's whole role is to be a liaison between like both the organized crime world and like the real world in a lot of ways. And as he says at the end of this issue, he's untouchable basically, and that presents so many great opportunities for this character to like kind of dip his toes in a bunch of different things because of his role, which is kind of a thing we really just don't see a lot in like media in general. Is like a UN liaison's job to be like an impartial mediator between multiple sides, and there's a lot of opportunity here. It's really exciting.
Oh yeah, definitely. I think it's really fantastic. I love Chip's approach to this story, and I can't wait to see more. I really can't. I think this is going to be something special.
Hello, Jerry. I'm untouchable.
Oh, you got the wolf? Shit, Negro, that's all you had to say. Classic, unforgettable Pulp Fiction.
Yeah, good shit.
So yeah, another home run for Chip, and we'll probably be back next month with another review of Newburn. But let's talk about something that we've been following for quite a while now. Let's talk about Radiant Black. Radiant Black #9. This is Kyle Higgins with Eduardo Ferrigado with Marcelo Costa, so sharing art duties there, and Becca Carey. So Marcelo Costa did the colors in this one. Unfortunately, not on the main story. I think when we spoke with Kyle, he said that there were some issues that was kind of baked into the idea that Marcelo would get a break, but he also did have that hand injury. So I don't remember, where this issue landed in terms of why this issue features Eduardo instead. But we read this. We read this at New York Comic Con. We actually were allowed to read this right in front of Kyle Higgins. I think he said we were like 4 of the earliest people to ever see this comic. If I recall correctly.
I think he said we might have been the first.
I think we were the first
10.
I feel like we were the first outside of Image, outside of like
like people who actually
worked on it and whatnot. Yeah. And I really enjoyed it then, and I enjoyed it now. I think this is a really good issue that kind of focuses on, the fact that like a tragedy happened, and it deals with the reality of, super heroics, what can happen. I really enjoyed this issue. This might be my favorite issue yet.
Yeah, I think this is probably the best issue in the book. He does a really, I think a thing that Kyle was trying to do in some of the early issues, I think of like issue 3, is like really ground his characters so that they feel believable. And it didn't always land, because Pete kind of brought up how I think comic writers often struggle with dialogue and stuff. Not that Kyle often does or whatever. It's just that does happen. I think this issue really is a grand slam, because by the end of it, we read this at the convention originally. You really feel the impact of the emotion and weight behind it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I definitely think this is the best issue of the book so far. I think it's funny. After our interview, we were talking to Kyle a bit more, and we were talking about how some people have criticized the pace of the book, and us included, but that this issue felt like a payoff. And I remember he made a joke where he's like, sometimes if you want your dessert, you got to eat your fucking broccoli, and I definitely feel like that resonated with me with this issue, where like I think that there are
that doesn't track. Dessert isn't payoff for dinner. Being full is payoff for dinner. What the fuck? God damn it!
Listen.
Damn,
he hated
too
broccoli.
bad you weren't there.
Yeah, seriously, we would have told him.
No, I wouldn't have. I wouldn't. If he'd have said that to my face, I'd have bought it.
Kel
You'd have
wouldn't,
been like, yeah, wow.
Kel wouldn't look me in the
Love
eye.
dessert.
Absolutely right.
I hated broccoli.
It's
as a
only
kid.
hearing it from someone dumb that I. No, just kidding.
All
No,
right.
I would have absolutely bought it if he'd said it to my face. I'm very stupid.
And I think that tracks for me here, where I feel like the work that's been put in, that Phil just referenced, right? Like that we've put in to get to know the characters and spend time with them, makes this issue work, or not necessarily work better, but it makes it more rewarding. It is kind of funny that, you know, we've been talking about how we felt like the book slowed down too much. And then this issue covers so much time, like so quickly, which, considering what we know about number 10, it's interesting. It's exciting because where we're driving now, it feels like the book has momentum in a way that I don't feel like it has, or at least it's had off and on, right? Where like it's felt like all movement has been in kind of like spurts, and then we slow down, and spurts, then we slow down. Whereas I feel like this issue does a lot of work to move things forward, in a way that feels, at least I thought, was very satisfying. And it has me really interested to see, you know, where things go from 10 and on.
I didn't really like Marshall too much before. Seeing his sort of like loyalty to Nathan become the primary focus. I really like the fact that, you know, he's kind of grieving this loss, even though Nathan is, you know, he's in the hospital, he's on, you know, life support or whatever. It's not looking good. And seeing that how that affects him, you know, how he moves about his day. This issue really felt like it kind of dragged us through what he's going through. It didn't feel like a slog or anything like that, but like, you know, it takes us through all of the pain and whatnot that he's in over this. And then seeing him speak to Red, right? Radiant Red or whatever.
Satomi.
Yeah, Satomi. And that conversation, him being very sort of, you know, angry at her for what she did and stuff like that. That was great too. And it actually makes her interesting because of her reaction, you know, so her playing off of him, her feeling bad about it. Now I'm like, okay, cool. We're getting somewhere with all these characters. Like, this is interesting.
These are the moments where I remember when that New York Comic Con episode, I felt similar to Pete, had that momentum, and this is like emotional payoff for everything that we've been working towards.
All that broccoli we ate,
all that fucking broccoli. Like I think that's the biggest. That's the biggest reward here, is we get to see these characters like really feel the things that they're going through, regardless of the span of time, regardless of like how it progresses the story. But seeing them genuinely react is what has been, for this issue, made it really, really strong.
Yeah, and by the way, the art is great.
Yeah,
I know it's not Marcelo Costa, but it doesn't not look like Marcelo Costa. Like,
yeah.
Like this was a good fill-in artist.
Yeah, it's hitting the same bar.
Yeah.
And I think I'm correct in saying this. Pete would probably know better, but I feel like Eduardo is a kind of friend, ally to Kyle. They've had a long-standing relationship, and
yeah, Kyle mentioned
he wanted Eduardo to be a part of this project. And I believe Eduardo is the one that recommended Marcelo Costa to do it, or Marcelo asked, or something along those lines.
Yeah, you're definitely correct about that. I'm a little hazy on the specifics, but yeah, you're definitely right there.
Yeah. So, but again, doesn't disappoint by any means. This is a great looking issue. And then from the colors angle, I really loved how each scene, or not maybe not each and every scene, but a lot of the scenes had a thematic element to them that was represented by color.
Mm-hmm.
That I thought that really worked really well.
Yeah, agreed. And I like the way that I really like the way that this issue uses time, and the way that it like presents some of the ways in which Marshall is kind of like stuck in a loop, right? And like he's doing the same thing every day, and kind of just like plodding through existence and trying to like figure out what the next steps are, like hoping that, you know, the next step starts when, you know, when he gets his friend back, right? And that's ultimately not, you know, at least in his mind, right? Like now not ever going to happen. Or at least, you know, I guess he's trying, but that I feel like that really, really plays, you know, and like seeing, you know, like that commitment to being there every day, and then the desperation that he clearly feels when, you know, they're talking about taking him off life support and everything, and like how tense that moment is with his mother, you know, and everything, and you know, and she says, "Stop it, just stop, Jesus Christ, Marshall," and like it feels very authentic, right? It feels very grounded and real, and it helps connect with the characters, right? Because I don't feel like Marshall was like, you know, the most likable character, right? Like he was kind of like the, you know, jerky best friend, you know, archetype. And like that character has their uses, but they're not always a character that I feel like I connect with, or who I like, you know, they're usually comic relief. They're something else. They're someone who exists to further the character that you actually give a shit about. And this issue made me care about him and what he was going through, because it presented an emotional depth to him that I don't think we'd really necessarily seen before, you know? And I think that's something that, you know, whether the pacing or not has worked for you, I think something that like Kyle has done a good job of is to show us who these characters are, and like at least the ones we've contextualized so far, like what matters to them, what they're afraid of, what, you know, they want out of life, or what they don't want out of life, or what they're not sure about, like all those things, right? That make characters feel, you know, three-dimensional and feel like rooted in a real world, in a real place that exists. And I think that these very, very close character-focused issues like that have been essential to us having that understanding. That moment with Red means something because what we know about her. So yeah, I think that it's all about the payoff. And now that we've invested this far, we're able to start leveraging the knowledge that we have to craft moments like this. And that's what I've been hoping for this book. That's what I've been hoping we were driving toward all this time. And it feels like we're getting there. Like the machine's built, and now, you know, we're ready to play.
Another great issue, hopefully. Well, you know, depending on your perspective, I am hoping that, you know, because I'm tired of broccoli, so I'm hoping that you know, this is just gonna be what this series is now.
Yeah.
You know, just real high quality, deep storytelling that we can be invested in. We actually got to see issue 10. Can't talk about it in any way, but it feels like it's definitely going to be killer. It was killer. It was awesome.
Something very unique. You're going to want to check it out. This is
Yeah.
my pick of the week.
Mine was Newburn. I forgot to say that, but yeah, mine was Newburn.
Can't wait for issue 9.5, where everything grinds to a halt for 2 months, and we get the story of Radiant Pink and how she's a ballet dancer who never could quite see Saturn the way she wanted.
See, you joke, but when that happens, and then it, you know, 5 issues later, we get something like this, I'm like, all right, you know what? Let's do it.
That's $20 later, by the way.
That is true.
Let's talk about a book that's probably not anyone's pick of the week here. Let's talk about Spawn 323. So the script is by Todd McFarlane, but he got an assist from a plot perspective from Rory McConville. Carlo Barberi is, of course, the artist on Spawn, but also got an assist by Thomas Nachlik for pages 18 and 20. Tom Orzechowski is the letterer. J. David Ramos did the colors, but got an assist by Nikos Koustis on pages 18 and 20. So Spawn has been moving at like a granular pace for the last 3 issues. literally every issue has built on almost the exact moment that the prior one left off. And unfortunately, the thing that's happening is not the most interesting thing that we could be seeing. So in this issue, Spawn is now confronted by vampires, basically. And they kind of want to team up, kind of want to kill him. It's sort of weird the way that the story is presented. But I'll tell you what, whatever you think about the script, if you don't look at the words, if you ignore that they're there, right? This is a hot book.
It looks nice.
That's some sexy ass vampires.
Yeah, I mean,
Move over, Robert Pattinson.
I think one thing we've been able to agree. Oh, excuse me.
Oh no, he's dying.
I'm dying.
First day with the new pipes, huh?
Yeah. Ooh. Sorry about that. I think the one thing we've agreed on is that the art has been good. You know, like Spawn is definitely an artist's book. And I don't think this issue's any exception, but I mean, when it comes to the script, talk about fucking broccoli, but like it's broccoli like dipped in that like green Shrek ketchup from like the early 2000s.
Oh.
It's just I can't with this, man.
I'm
you guys-
overwhelmed by that.
Do you guys not like broccoli?
I love
I
broccoli.
enjoy
Broccoli's
broccoli.
I actually
great.
like broccoli
Yeah.
a lot. It's my favorite vegetable.
Broccoli fucking rules. Why are we dogging on broccoli?
Pick a
Get with
good
the meme.
All right, you know what? Fine. I don't know what vegetable this is, but it's a bad one.
No, do you know what it is? All it is the Shrek colored ketchup. We're
You're
eating
right.
spoonfuls of it.
I'm just mainlining that shit right into my veins, I guess. It's an IV bag filled with Shrek ketchup.
I would rather do that than have to taste it.
Yeah, seriously.
I don't know what you guys are talking about. This stuff was, I mean, it was ketchup. Like, what do you want?
It's green.
So,
That's nasty, Kale.
Yeah, I don't know, dude. Like, I just
Texas.
obviously, you know, we've talked a lot about the scripts and just how they don't work for us for the most part. But I think like there's just so little that happens in these issues. Like when you like, okay, like yeah, the elevator pitch of this issue is like a bunch of vampires come to, you know, talk with Spawn or whatever and offer him an alliance, and he rejects it, so they fight, and you know, and that's it, right? But Spawn's weak. He's weakened right now. On paper, okay, fine elevator pitch for the issue. Why doesn't Spawn fight the vampires? Like he summons a bunch of zombies. That's not. I don't want to see zombies eat vampires. If I'm gonna read Spawn, I want to watch Spawn fuck up a bunch of vampires. That's the one thing that this book does is cool action of him fighting monsters, and we didn't even get that.
but is that the hot thing for this issue? Is he can summon the dead? Like, has he done that before?
Maybe
He
not.
must have.
But like, I don't like. That's not as cool as all of his other powers.
Yeah, but we've had 322 issues of his other powers.
Fair enough. Yeah.
Like, yeah, those are cool, but we've had 322 issues of that. Like, it's not cool anymore. Like, I mean, it's still cool, but like, but now he can summon the dead.
That's cool.
Listen,
I mean, it ain't not cool.
listen, Sean is ultimately correct here. If we are just reading this book without the words, because my God, does this vampire just talk in paragraphs? Then it's a pretty good book. Pretty good book.
So
The minute you add the words, it's like, boy, this sure isn't a page turner anymore.
Spawn
I'm-
thought about it, if you were wondering.
I'm gonna give it credit for being better than the previous 2 Spawn issues that we've read from from like a script perspective, because there were definitely moments in the last issue where he kept repeating phrases and paragraphs of not understanding in text, and at the very least this had some modicum of movement. Wasn't great, but they got, at the very least he got stuff across, and like, okay, fine, I get the premise here. There are ways to cut down and whittle down on it, but this was better, and that's the best that I can say.
Yeah, I like what the story is about and what it's building towards. I'm waiting for this damn war between heaven and hell to kick into high gear. Like, even if I don't necessarily love the script, the concept is what I'm here for. I'm into it. the problem is that I'm not sure how long it's going to take for us to get somewhere. Like, this house is the same house from 2 issues ago that crazy demon guy had that girl and her baby in.
Yep.
How long are we going to be at this house for? This blackout that happened 2 issues ago or whatever. Like, please, can we move along? And the vampire element I actually found to be pretty interesting. But can we do that somewhere else? Like, I don't know. I just want to get away from the scene already.
God's already taken us to hell, folks.
The thing that bugs me is, like, it reminds me of, you and I had a conversation about this, Sean. I don't remember if it was on one of these reviews or if it was with the gunslinger thing, where it's like, yeah. I feel like there are ways in which I could see this script, this same base plot for an issue being interesting, and I feel like this took every opportunity to not be interesting. I think it would have been more interesting if Spawn fought the vampires. It would have been more interesting if he entered to actually sincerely entertain the idea of working with them. And even, I'm gonna double cross him or whatever. Like, that would be something. I'd be like, oh, cool. That's different. The fact that he was like, I'll never compromise and side with you is like, of course that's what he did, right? But then we don't even get the square off. He cuts the one guy's head off. All right, great. I don't know, man. It's like, be more action oriented or more clever or something. Because I just feel like I have nothing to grab onto here. Like, what was the point of this issue?
Well, I think I don't know. I'm a little bit surprised by that criticism. Spawn sticking to his kind of moral compass or whatever is a bad thing.
No, and you're right. That, I guess that is true. That's like, if he did that, maybe you would argue that's out of character, right? But, like, I don't know. I just feel like it took the least interesting path to resolution for this conflict for me.
I mean, I actually preferred the fact that he just, like, deaded the one guy and then summoned zombies. He's like, all right, the rest of you are not worth, like, the time. I'm like, okay, cool. Like, I get it. Like, he has... I mean, I don't know if he has more important shit to do because we're still here, but, like...
still sitting in this house.
But, like, he doesn't have the time to square off with these, scrubs. So, like, zombies, I'm like, oh, shit. And they'll fight off and whatever, he gets to run away.
You just say he deaded that vampire?
He killed him.
He did say that.
Yeah.
He got it right.
I know he killed him.
No, he deaded him.
He deaded him.
He deaded him.
Absolutely.
There is a word for that.
Hey, Kel, did Marco stutter?
Deaded? Maybe.
Did he? I'm not sure.
I also want to say that, if let's assume, right, because like 323 issues, he probably has summoned demons or zombies or undead, whatever, in the past.
Sure.
I didn't know that.
Same.
Like, I feel like there's so many things in Spawn's. Every issue comes out and someone here says, oh, wow, that's cool. Who's that character, right?
Yeah.
And then somebody in our YouTube comments is like, oh, well, that character's from issue 8 of Spawn, you know? And it's like, oh, shit, didn't know that. So I'm cool with all that, right? Like, there's nothing conceptually wrong with anything here except the script. And even that isn't terrible. What frustrates me is that it's not enough. It's not good enough. It could be so much better. What's frustrating me is that I know this could be so much better. But yeah, I do have to say, I felt like this issue was an improvement, and I could do a lot worse than reading a comic book with art this good. I can't praise it enough.
But we've beaten this dead horse.
Deaded horse.
You beat horses, Kale?
Alrighty, let's jump on to the next book, huh?
Speaking of beating animals, let's talk about Primordial.
Oh no!
By Jeff Lemire. With art by Andrea Sorrentino and colors by Dave Stewart, letters and designs by Steve Wands. I felt a lot for this animal, Laika.
Yeah.
And Kale, I was just curious about how you felt about the scene where Laika's, wandering homeless, and tries to make friends with someone. What did you feel about that?
Oh my god. I mean, every animal deserves love, right? Like, what do you want?
My pick of the week, Primordial number 2. This was a really excellent. This is just great storytelling. Like Jeff Lemire just takes us through the life of Laika. Like we leave on this giant cliffhanger at the end of the first issue. Like where are they? Somewhere in between time and space, perhaps. In this issue, it's funny. We talk about issue 3 of Radiant Black and its shortcomings, but this issue is doing something similar in its intent, but succeeds very well. There's not a lot of dialogue. There's not a lot of exposition. It's a story told specifically through clever paneling and beautiful art. And I can't stress how beautiful this issue is enough.
The use of the contrasting styles, like one to counterpoint, like current time and the current scene with the past and like that emotion, because there are moments where Laika's like gets caged and looks sad and leaning over, but that same emotion is carried through to the next whatever dimension, which is in the next panel, which is entering that next scene, and so everything flows and is communicated sequentially, like really amazingly. To that point, right, Phil? Like you didn't need the dialogue; you were seeing and feeling exactly what you needed to.
This is the anti-Spawn. Like this is what we're talking about with Spawn, is like beautiful visuals and a story told through the art, like an artistic visual medium. And unlike Todd McFarlane, this issue doesn't dwell on exposition. It doesn't dwell on word bubbles. It just lets it be what it is. It's a story about a dog.
I think it's really interesting because I made a joke about it on the show proper this week that like I don't have any idea what's going on in this book in like a macro sense, right? Like I literally could tell you what happened in this issue, but like what the implications of what we're seeing are still a mystery to me. But that's totally fine because Jesus, are these books just so satisfying to look at, right? Like the art is so strong and the script is sparse, but what's there is meaningful and impactful and helps to, humanize Laika and, give you a sense to, what her emotional state is and everything, which I don't know, like just like that last like page, right? Like the thing where she's like thinking to herself that she's alone and then, sees our other two, I forget the name of these monkeys, but that moment, like it feels surprisingly emotional, because of what we've seen, her journey in this issue, right? And it created a lot of empathy on my end for her as a character, right? Which is, I think, tough to do for like a silent character too. It's easy because it's a dog, right? Like everybody likes dogs. It's easy to like empathize with a dog that just wants love. But yeah, it's a sparse, effective script, which I think shows considerable restraint. Which is not. It's hard. That's a hard line to walk.
Yeah. I actually have, all joking aside, like a ton of love for animals, and dogs in particular. And so it was very sad to see the state of Laika at the, the start of this book.
Yeah.
And I think that, you can do a lot without words in comics. And I'm so glad to see more writers kind of recognizing that sometimes less is more when it comes to the script. And, most people with a heart, right? Most people are caring about animals. And so you're hooked emotionally just off the idea that there's this animal that's, alone and afraid. And when you see the animal get assaulted, that is supposed to evoke a reaction out of you. There could be a narration box that said, and Leica was cold and alone and now abused, like something corny that would not add anything to what we saw. We get what we saw. We don't need verbiage. And so Jeff Lemire deserves credit for what he doesn't say in this book.
Yes.
As much as what he does.
How dare you come at Todd McFarlane like that?
Hey, I didn't say any names.
Todd McFarlane would write something like Leica was alone, more alone than any point in her life before, and she knew what she had to do next. She had to find a home, and so that's what she set out to do. It's just like, dude.
Yeah. It's a great book, visually very appealing. I guess I haven't seen too much conversation about Primordial, so hopefully people are reading it. We really enjoyed it. It's very different. The main story, I guess, is moving slowly from the first issue, but I think that by now, pacing wise, for the time being, we know what we're going to get. Like, it's probably going to be this weird book that, is showing us things that don't immediately make sense. And, we're in for a ride. And I think this is a book that's less straightforward, and it presents itself that way from jump. So I'm more willing to give it a lot more rope. And it helps that it's also just really good.
Yeah, I think that's the thing is I think maybe in the hands of like a lesser creative team, if there was a script that was trying to do work that it didn't need to do, if the art was less dynamic and interesting, like I might not be willing to give it that same rope, because we talk all the time about how the job of an issue 1 is to grab you and the job of an issue 2 is to follow up on that promise. And I think that this is a really, really deliberate book. And I think that's why it works for me, where other books that maybe have a similar pace fall flat. Like, there's nothing wrong with being slow if you're making every moment count, and I respond to that. And that's what it seems like we're getting out of this, where some of the other books that we've criticized in recent memory for being slow are just not checking those boxes as effectively, or aren't trying to do something that's as interesting.
You respond to that, eh?
Yes, I would say that I do.
Woof, all right.
The cover for the next issue looks like it's one of the Capuchin monkeys, and if it's going to be something similar to this kind of a story, I'm down to like get the emotional story of these animals before we get to see how the story progresses, because I think that mystery is still enticing, and like the why of it all is the fact that we get to like see the lives of these animals. I think helps to carry weight for why we want to get back in touch with them, because they're making human connections, and the mystery that they're wrapped up in is really interesting. So hopefully we get more of that monkey.
We're all here for monkeys and dogs, right? We're all in agreement.
Yeah.
Yes.
Love them.
Absolutely. We're friend to all
Right.
animals.
Absolutely.
Some of us more than
Kale
friends.
Ward, friend of animals. So let us know what your thoughts were about this week's books. Tell us your book of the week. Get us on social media at The Comics Pals. Leave us a follow, rating, review wherever you listen to us. YouTube.com/The Comics Pals. Leave your comments in the comments section. Subscribe for free. Make sure you're telling your friends about this show and that you enjoy it. And tell them, who your favorite pal is and why it's Kale.
Not gonna get any of those.
Thank you to Image for providing us with these books. We super appreciate it. And thank you guys for listening. Until next week, we will see you next time. Take care, guys.
Take it easy, everybody.
They bite me.
You bite them.